Okay, well, let's get underway. And Eric's going to keep letting people in. We're at about 52 people right now. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. And this is our last meeting before the new year. And before we begin, I'm just going to ask Ann Pohl to do the land acknowledgement. Ann?
Hello. This is not going to be your usual land acknowledgement. By this point in this century, in the nation state, which has been known as Canada for a couple hundred years now, those of us who are co-conspirators, a term I learned from Terry Moore, already have heard the standard Indigenous territorial land acknowledgement for our own areas and other areas numerous times. I reckon some of us could repeat them in our sleep. In the time I've been given to make the land acknowledgement for this meeting, I want to honor Murray Sinclair. A couple weeks ago, he passed over to the spirit world, or we might say gone to join the star people, or maybe think of it as a beacon of light, him as a beacon of light in our memories. He deserves all the recognition he's been given for what he has contributed toward trying to make Canada a more just and ethical nation, while never allowing anyone to forget that we Canadians have a long way to go to reach that goal. Canada was built on genocidal policies from the get-go, actually before the get-go, but I'll move forward. The most famous quote from the Honorable Murray Sinclair, coined during his years as chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is, "Education got us into this, and education will get us out." The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's main topic was a review of the damage done to all Indigenous peoples and their cultures and communities and families and children as a result of the residential schools policy from the newly formed Government of Canada in collusion with several churches and religious orders. Again, I'm not going to go into that discussion too much because I trust that in this gathering of activists for a better world, we all know about residential schools and how terrible they were for their intent and for almost all the entirety of their implementation. The 94 calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report identified the work we all need to do to bring forth the truth about residential schools and demand justice for the survivors and for those who did not survive. This report and its calls to action are the legs under Murray Sinclair's statement, "Education got us into this, and education will get us out." A careful read of those 94 calls to action shows how many of them simply call for education of Canadians on the full range of Indigenous rights. I think it's about 10 that call directly for that, and some imply it. On the full range of Indigenous rights, histories, and cultures. Our group up here in the Kitchissippi, Ottawa Valley did a careful read aloud on Zoom of those calls a few years ago. It was a great learning time for all of us, and it took about 3 hours, by the way. As Murray Sinclair points out in a YouTube video I watched while preparing for this moment, reconciliation is not a spectator sport. Quotes, "It is a participatory sport, and you are already engaged one way or another." Just a few more quick notes. We all have to get over talking about spirituality if you really want to do reconciliation, and that's just the bottom line. I had to do it, and you have to do it too, if you're hung up on it. I have two feathers that were given to me by people from my work on the Ipperwash Coalition and also work on the Peace and Friendship Alliance and anti-fracking water protection down east. So that's why I've learned to trust that what I'm doing tonight is okay, but in the bottom line is you just try, because by trying, you're doing better than you are by being silent. I've sent a resource list, a one-page resource list to Dave Smith, who said he would find a way to share it with people. If you want to know some, sources to go to get more information. And finally, I'm offering to do a workshop on building alliances for members of this new network if people desire it. Walalan, miigwech, thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you very much for that challenging presentation. and it sets the tone, I think, for the work we have going ahead. So first of all, before we begin, I want to suggest that everybody put their name in the chat and as well as the location. The reason for that is we can get a record of people who attended by email address. It's very hard for us to put that into to know where everybody was from. It's possible, but it takes a lot of work. So if you don't mind, please put your name in the chat and the location from which you're calling in from. So since our last meeting, a couple things have happened. Donald Trump was elected as the U.S. president, and COP29 is now completed. And there was, interestingly, there's been a lot of opposition within the discussions at COP from the smaller nations, and it looks like England is trying to form a coalition of countries for climate action, and they've set a emissions target of 81% below 1990 levels by the year 2035, which is substantial, and if it's actually carried out, is actually a serious commitment that could lead to change. So interestingly, these things have been happening, and a lot of the failure of COP probably is related to the election of Trump and its impact on the boldness of some countries to refuse to cooperate, etc. So as we go ahead, we got three. This is the context in which we're going to be working over the next little while. We've got 4 decisions we made in our last meeting. One was to have a countrywide action on or around October 1st next year. And we had a second decision, a countrywide action in the spring of this next coming year, 2025, perhaps in collaboration with other organizations. We had another one, which is that local groups would show the flag, essentially use the SFC banner, continue organizing as they choose and as they're able. And finally, that there be additional activities and issues as opportunities arise and capacity permits. So today's agenda is built around those things. It's not so much about the October mobilization, more the spring one. So the first item will be the spring mobilization and some of the objectives we have there, and including expanding our mailing list. The second, and there'll be discussion, will follow that. The second one will be on ongoing activities and putting climate on the agenda. And that, again, will be a presentation followed by discussion. The third one will be some local groups and specific actions that are being organized that will be presented to see what we can or can't do to support them, or how much other people and other locations will want to take those on. Then we'll move to budget and fundraising, which of course is an important issue if we're going to accomplish our objectives. And finally, finish with some questions and discussion time for that. The objective today is to both tell you what we've been working on, but also to learn from you in terms of what you can contribute or what you can tell us, and how we can get a better understanding of implementing some of the stuff we're working on. So I'll now call on Pat Wally, who will do the first section, which is about the spring mobilization. Pat.
Hi, everybody. Glad you were able to join us. I'm certainly going to talk about our spring mobilization. And the reality is there's not a lot to tell you yet, because we're still in the process of just in discussion with national and international groups, trying to see if there's other spring activities in the works for which we will join or not. But we want to know what else is happening before we make a decision about a date and a theme. And we will be making those decisions before our January meeting. So we'll be able to give you that information then, so that you can book space and get started planning and that sort of thing. In the interim, we're hoping that you're able to continue with your activities, but also to mobilize and talk to more people. The more people that we get involved, the better. And if this is a time of year when people get together to socialize, maybe this is a time to talk to them about if they have an interest. So give that some thought as you go forward, to see if you can find folks who might want to volunteer or local groups that might be doing some activities that you could join. So just keep that in mind. Now, Nancy Nickel has been working on a podcast, correct? And she's going to speak about that now.
It's not a podcast, it's a documentary.
Document. I knew it was wrong when I opened my mouth, but go for it.
Yeah. So I received over 2,000 files, video files and image files from people across the country from their October 1st activities. And so first of all, thank you to everyone who has sent material. It was a lot to go through, and a lot of the video was of different formats and so on. So it's taken me some time to review the material and conform it to HD and bring it into the edit system. All of that's been done now. I'm still expecting to get material from 2 locations, which is still outstanding and coming. So first of all, I'm quite confident that I can make a really interesting documentary with this material. There's tons of interesting content. It's a little tricky to work with some of it because the audio quality is very uneven. But there's also a lot of artists, musicians that performed in various different locations. And that material is also really fantastic in terms of cutting an interesting documentary. The working title, I think, is Later is Too Late. I would ask everyone, please don't delete your video or images from October 1st. I might be back in touch to say, do you have XYZ? As I'm editing it, I find it would be helpful to have, say, some shots of the crowd, things like that. So I might be back in touch with people. I do have to caution everyone that I won't be able to include all the locations. That's just simply not possible. If it's going to be a watchable video, I'm going to have to select and cut it. I'm making good progress. I basically have been doing rough assemble edits of locations. So my goal is to have a rough cut done by the end of January, and also a 3 to 5 minute trailer. I've asked 5 people from different parts of the country to review the rough cut. So I've got a little team on board now. And once I get their feedback, then I'll work on finalizing the edit. My goal is to have the final piece done by Earth Day. This work would probably really benefit from having a professional sound edit. And I don't really have the proper tools to do I can work with sound, but there are better tools than what I've got. So I'm looking around to see if I can find a audio post place that I can work with. So that might delay the time in completing it, but my hope is to have it ready for Earth Day. And I will run this by my distributor as well, because they may have some suggestions. They may know if there are festivals that would be interested in taking it as well. But the goal is to make it a kind of call to action, educative call to action. Obviously, it's a documentation of October 1st. But to make the work useful, I think it needs to be educative and something that the groups can use to build their outreach. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much. Now, Dave Smith has pulled together a couple of examples of storytelling that he is going to show us now. So this one might give you some ideas of some, if you can find these folks in your communities.
Thank you, Pat. So I'll just mention, Pat mentioned talking to people over the holidays, and for sure, the information that we have from Reclimate is friends and family are the most trusted source of information across the country. And I think you'll agree, once you've seen some of these videos, that they're very powerful and they're very motivating to be able to do things. Two in particular that are kind of professionally done and kind of steer people towards one end. But we are going to be asking you if you're willing to share some videos with us to record your own stories of climate change and let us know that you have them. We'll reach out to you and try to get a copy of it and use it some way, either in social media or some other purpose. So here are the videos.
My name is Megan Fendridge. I used to own a coffee shop that was an art cafe, so it had local art, and we roasted our own beans, and we had delicious baking, and it was such a lovely space. And really often we would see firefighters come in, and I would see them in fire season, and I would watch them as the season progressed, as they got more and more exhausted, run down, burnt out. Like, you could see it in their faces, just how they ordered their cappuccino. And that little cafe was destroyed by wildfire when the town of Lytton burned on June 30th, 2021. I miss it. And the firefighters that I used to see there are still out there. They're still fighting fires. They lost their homes in the Lytton fire, and they are still there. They saved big parts of our community in the surrounding area. They save so many people and so many homes and so many forests every year. But climate change is making these fires worse. Climate change is making these fires burn hotter with more intensity. There are more fires. We see it. We see it every summer, every unprecedented summer. I really encourage everyone to sign the Don't Let Canada Burn petition, because we need to get firefighters the support that they deserve.
The impact of climate change on my wife and I was noted when we moved out here onto a 25-acre parcel in the temperate rainforest of the Highlands. And in 2021, we became increasingly aware of the environment, the impact of climate, the increasing temperatures on the trees and the entire forest around us. But in 2021, when the heat bomb hit, it killed most of the vegetation. The foxgloves, the blooms on the ocean spray, virtually all the plant life died over the course of 2 days. Temperatures are registered around 40 degrees at Sydney, which is one of the coolest places surrounded by water on the southern peninsula. At our place, it was probably well into the 40s. And it was an epiphany-like moment.
Hi, my name's Heather McKay. In August of 2023, West Kelowna was ravaged by the McDougall Creek Fire. Our home was one of 189 homes lost to the fire. I cannot even begin to describe the devastation and heartbreak that we felt when we found out we lost everything. I had gone to work that day just like every other day, but I've never been home since. However, we're very grateful that no lives were lost, and we're very grateful for our local firefighters who worked tirelessly to try to save our homes. Sadly, 13 of those firefighters actually lost their homes while they fought to save our community. I can't imagine what it would have been like for their families to have to evacuate, to seek refuge, to process their own feelings, all while worrying about the safety of their firefighter. Realistically, in Canada, we just don't have the equipment and the support that our firefighters need to effectively fight the fires. As climate change increases the amount of fires we have each year, we need to double the support our firefighters receive so that they can effectively fight double the fires we used to have. I encourage everyone who's able to go to don'tletcanadaburn.ca and sign the petition and show our firefighters we care.
It's affected me personally on a few occasions. Last summer's extreme smoke in our streets here in Ottawa. Difficult to get out and walk. My dog didn't like the smoke either. And my wife and I were also caught in the Rico storm that hit a couple of years ago in our vehicle when trees started falling all around us. So that was a pretty scary incident.
So those are the videos, and you can see that they do have a tremendous impact. So if you have a story that you would like to share with us, as I said, please let us know. Back to you, Pat.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for pulling that together. So we've got a few minutes for discussion. What did you think of those videos? Is there something in your community that you might be able to do? Any thoughts? Please put your hand up if you'd like to comment.
Comments on what you said? No.
Ricky? You're on mute, Ricky.
Thanks. Here in Victoria, we had a meeting of our steering committee yesterday, and the fellow who spoke, Tim Watson, who just spoke about living in the Highlands, suggested that we think about posting what we are personally doing about climate change as a story, sort of along the lines of, we're old enough all to remember participation, where on a certain day people logged the exercise that they did that day or that week. And that's something that could be part of a spring action and a storytelling, as well as the kinds of stories we heard.
Okay. Sheila? You're on mute as well. There, thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to mention that at Calgary's October 1st event, we offered people the opportunity to make a 45-second to 1-minute video of anything regarding them and climate change. So we have some of those, and I was thinking they might be pertinent to send to Dave Smith.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And certainly in Winnipeg at our October 1st, we had folks take pledges as to what they were going to do go forward and had those taken with a videographer. And we've submitted some of that stuff to Dave already.
Sheila, I'm just going to mention you can reach me through admin@seniorsforclimate.org. I'll stick it in the chat.
Anyone else with comments at this point? Well, then I'll turn it over to, oh, yes, Nick, go ahead.
Well, just to speak to the spring mobilization, although we don't have a date yet, we do want to start talking about it and getting activities and preparing for it. We're going to be meeting on the 14th of January, the next meeting of this group. But when we get there, we're going to have a date. We'll have a date sooner rather than later. There's as Pat said, there's investigation with different groups about what the possibilities, because we'd like to do it with more than just us. But it's important to start working on it now and start talking about it now. There'll be a date that'll come, but the action is going to happen one way or another. And clearly we think with what's happening on the global situation, this last COP29, the need's all the more urgent. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Canada as a result of Trump election in the U.S. And so there'll be pressure on us to give in to whatever the US wants, which always is an issue for us in our country. And I think that's going to be worse. So the mobilization is all the more important, and and I think that's important. The video documentary that Nancy's working on will be actually a very effective tool, I believe, to popularize what we're going to be doing in the next period of time. And I just want to thank her, first of all, for the work that she's doing, but point out that as soon as that's ready, we can really make use of that to popularize what we're trying to do. So even though we don't have a date, we do have we don't have a date and we don't have the actual setup in terms of what's going to happen. It will be happening. And we should hit the road running in at the beginning of January, and really we'll probably have 3 or 4 months at that point to build up something substantial. So that's just wanted to add those comments.
Okay. Anne, you're on mute still.
Yeah, I just want to make a pitch for Earth Day, April 22nd. We've done events on Earth Day for 3 years now, and found them very successful in our rural area where we have a lot of climate skeptics and climate deniers. And because it's Earth Day, people are not scared to come out, even if they have relatives that have, the wrong other views from them. They are, not climate aware, because they can celebrate it. And I don't know how many other organizations are in the same situation as us, where, we're really fighting up from under, in terms of the popular position on things. So I just want to really make a pitch for that. It would be great to see us do something like that, have a national, these things happening across the country on Earth Day that we could tag to. And while I'm at it, I want to mention that we gave away our banner, our Seniors for Climate banner, to Valdi, who came and did a performance here, and we wanted him to really talk up, because it's an audience, the people that came out, the 200 people that came out, we had a table there with information about our group and our postcard pop-ups and that, but nobody was really stopping, and we wanted him to talk up climate. And we knew he'd done a song for the Salt Spring action, the Salt Springer October 1st action. So we gave him our banner, and he did a song, and he talked it up, and he actually got people singing along with him, which is the first time I could even imagine something like that happening, in a big room full of a couple hundred people. So anyways, yeah, if there's an extra banner, it'd be great to get it.
Well, we'll see. Okay, Peter. Thanks, Anne.
I see the occasional hand go up with nothing happening, and just to let everyone know that at the bottom of the screen is a heart. If you click on that heart, it gives you the option to raise your hand. It gives you a few other options as well.
Thank you, Peter. Nancy, you're on mute.
Yeah, we have already started doing some work for Earth Day. We've had Earth Day events. I'm in Kingston, Ontario, for the last couple of years. So we've reached out to a number of groups already and proposed that we start bringing together a team with representatives from different groups that have previously been involved with Earth Day. So I think targeting Earth Day is a really great idea. The theme for Earth Day this year is "It's Our Power, It's Our Planet." So there's kind of a little play on people power and renewable power, which I think will work very well for us.
Okay, thank you. Linda, and you're on mute, Linda.
Okay, hi, good evening. I just want to, I actually like that Earth Day, our people, our planet, and very much so. What I wanted to say is, talking about what we're doing individually and participation, that type of thing. It's too late. We need to petition our governments, elect politicians who are hearing us. And I just don't know what to say. Here in Bell River, where I'm at, we haven't had any snow. Temperatures are 6-10 degrees. We're not having the snowfall. This is really a climate breakdown. And I would really like to reiterate to the politicians to get off your butt and do something. We're looking at probably a federal election next year, probably with the Conservatives coming in power. We need to do everything we can to elect politicians who believe in climate breakdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Letitia? And you're on mute. And then we'll Letitia be the last speaker, and then we'll move on.
I'd like to reiterate what Linda just said. Here in Ontario, we're probably going to have a spring election, and that might really affect the amount of resources, energy we have for a spring event. If we're going to be well, especially Seniors for Climate, if we're going to be focusing on helping elect, decent candidates, we might not have. Is there any way we can combine election campaigning with the spring event?
Maybe. It's certainly something we can keep in mind, but okay. I am now going to pass this off to Arlene, who's going to talk about our ongoing activities.
Hi, thank you so much for all of those suggestions. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, I'm Arlene, actually, I should say, from the BC Hub, which is a partnership between Spec Elders and Suzuki Elders here in Vancouver. And yes, there's lots to do. And what I think we possibly could celebrate is that the first year of Seniors for Climate was actually a success. There were 76 centers around the country that organized a climate action, and that resulted in over 6,000 people participating across the country in a variety of events. So there were over 300 media hits, and Seniors for Climate now has 3,400 subscribers. So in many ways, we might never know what the positive impact of these events were, and in moving the dial towards more effective climate action. So now that we've proven ourselves a bit, we need to invest in even more and bolder actions in the coming year in order to put climate issues on many more agendas. We've learned a lot, and we want to continue to build a strong movement to demonstrate our concerns, have our voices heard in cohesive ways, and to use our power even more effectively. Seniors for Climate continues to explore useful ways to facilitate and support bold, cohesive, and dare we say even wise action. One important and obvious way is to increase numbers. We know that we now have a good base. So let's increase our subscribers to well over 10,000 active, engaged seniors. Let's come up with creative ideas and start them locally and beyond in order not only attract media and political interest, but also other seniors who might not feel knowledgeable enough and who might not even feel invited to participate and learn. So I think it's important for each of the 76 centers from last year to feel good about our accomplishments and ask ourselves the following questions to help us to move forward. What actually worked well? And what strengths and resources did we have in order to make these things work well? What do we need more of in order to do these things even better this year? Did you take advantage of the Seniors for Climate website and the tangible offerings there? We all likely appreciated the banners and the emissions caps, and using the name of a supportive initiative that we can identify with and that can help facilitate connections and strong actions. So this year, let's find and share ways to increase our numbers. For instance, not only take the pledge ourselves that's offered on the website, but take it to every community meeting that we go to as an introduction to get folks on site. We can share ideas to avoid wasting time and reinventing the wheel over and over. And by offering topics for teaching and learning in webinars. And we can actually share positives, something that's a little hard to do these days. So let's get ready and mobilize ourselves on January the 14th for even more success in 2025 and become more than the sum of our parts. So we've heard a few ideas, and in a few minutes we'll hear a few more about how to start that ball rolling. And I guess there's a bit more time here to continue with questions and comments around these topics about what's been, if you have things to offer what's been said, about what's been said, or new ideas.
Okay. Thanks, Arlene. So I wasn't sure, were you finished, Arlene?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, let's get some discussion going, and we'll also review a few other things that we're going to have available. Like we're going to do some webinars and workshops, and it'll be important to know some ideas around that as well. So Liba?
A couple of things. I'm thinking about Seth Klein and his telling us, okay, never mind the little events. Let's go big, and let's make a splash. And I'm thinking we have to think outside the box. I've been talking to some people recently who were proposing actions that were very well outside the box. That's the way that I want to start thinking about a spring mobilization. And I'm going to be asking people in our little group to come up with some big ideas. I think what's important is there are a couple of things, obviously, that are important. One is the local organizing and making sure that you're getting people engaged. But also, when we're having our events, we do want to attract media attention because we do want the politicians to sit up and take notice. And I think that's a critical piece. It's not the only piece. Mobilization is probably the primary piece. So signing up and having numbers is one thing, that's good. But getting people to actually work together is even better. And one thing that is very useful about the way that Seniors for Climate is organized is that we all have had the opportunity to see what other people did and say, ooh, I'd like to do that too. So we can learn from each other. And that's part of, I think, why we're gathered together now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. To remind people before we go on, if you're just coming in the meeting since the meeting began, please put your name in the chat and the location where you're calling in from. And I'll go to Billy. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute, Billy. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
I really believe that the education piece is a very important piece about what we're doing. I think that in the beginning, we had our scientists using terminology that they were flipping and changing all the time. And once people get 2 or 3 kinds of thoughts in their head, they get confused and then they don't participate. I have in my town of Amherstburg, I put on presentations from a PowerPoint. And I have been asked by the Canadian Federation of University Women to present to them at their May national gathering in Windsor, Ontario. I'd been asked to do just their club, and I had a fall from grace. Those are hospital curtains behind me. So I do believe that I will be back on foot by the time May comes, and that will be their outreach. Now, that group is already talking about the kind of health that we're experiencing as a result of climate change. This is their direction. They're worried about public health. So I think that when we talked to Courtney Howard and her group that she put together, which was Power Group, I think we have to stand in front of every politician's office and we have to say, if you don't have a healthy response to climate change, you're not electable. And we have to start to be really bold. I agree that, you know, the numbers are important, but what we do with the numbers that we have is more important. And I think that we have to move out of not having an ask. I think we need to have a very clear ask about what we want, because we're not going to get it if we don't have a clear ask of our politicians. And I believe that our education piece is a really big piece, and that I think Nancy has a little clip of me talking to seniors at our clubs in town here. I put on 3 presentations. I've been on the radio and I was in our local paper. So you have to be speaking to other people in every way that you can speak to them. And your message has to be consistent. And really, if you don't have a positive, healthy response to climate change, you're not electable. And I think we should have somebody standing outside in front of every constituency office and saying so. So that's my idea moving forward.
Okay, thank you. A very interesting idea, being outside of every constituency office. Really good. A couple of things have come up so far. We'll go on to the next people who want to speak. One is sharing information. So we are going to have on the website a page where people can put forward the initiatives they're taking in each location where you are. So please look for that. I'm not quite sure when it'll be available, but soon that will be up and running. And the other piece that, again, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right, but it's Billa or Billy. I'm not sure which it is, but either way, the education. So we will be doing some webinars. We will be looking for ideas on workshops, and we can also, of course, popularize some of the work that people are already doing. So those are really important concepts.
Dave, I have a PowerPoint that I use to go out, and it's climate change basics. And it's got a lot of graphics in it that people can understand very easily. I think pictures are really important when we're talking to people. I think there's images are very easy to put in somebody's head. Sometimes words get confused on the way in, and later on thinking doesn't really connect them the way they were delivered. But certainly graphics do. And I have tremendous graphics inside of my basic climate change that'll show you how hot we're getting, and we're going to have our hottest year here. Linda Taylor was right. November here is going to chart above 1.5. So yeah. We haven't got a lot of time to spare here. We have to be critical right now.
Totally true. Not a lot of time to spare. Very important. Can you send us those slides? And,
I believe I sent them to someone. But I will send them again, Dave.
Okay, so
who would you
David
like me to
Smith,
send
can
them
you
to?
put the address to send them to in the chat? And then if you look for that and send them to that address, we'll make sure that people have access to it. Lois.
Right.
Yeah, we just finished our second event last week. So we had a potluck and climate conversations event on October the 1st. Last week, we had a youth and seniors potluck and climate conversation. And we had several members of the general community. We also had a lot of experts in the room, scientists, retired scientists and whatnot. So we have formed kind of a coalition with the students of the green teams in the 2 high schools in Yellowknife. And we are working with Ecology North, which is an environmental organization. So I guess we're looking for opportunities to affect change. What we focused on last week was the government of the Northwest Territories is coming forth with a climate action plan. It's a pitiful endeavor. The kids in the high schools have taken this this plan apart, and Ecology North has taken it apart, and I've taken it apart with some other seniors, and we are putting forth recommendations to the government. And I think in the next week or so, the students are going to appear before the standing committee of the legislature to speak directly to the politicians. So we are building a climate action community that is seniors, is youth, is related to NGOs. And I think we're going to do a third potluck and climate conversation event in mid-January. And we're going to focus on the city of Yellowknife's climate action plan. So locally, I'm very optimistic that we are, we've probably got now well over 100 people in a community of 20,000 involved in this climate action community. And there's been lots of great relationships that have come out of the two events so far. So I think, education is certainly key. Relationships and accountability to each other is also really important. And focusing on specific actions is really it's hopeful. Like, these discussions are not easy. And, we're here north of 60 are on the front line of climate breakdown. And so there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, and these relationships are so important to people's mental health, to people's ability to engage on this subject. So I encourage every opportunity to talk to each other and build community, as well as what Billy was saying around education. So that's it from me. Thanks.
So important, those concepts. The personal stories that we don't hear enough about is what's happening north of 60 and how dramatic the impacts are already in terms of climate breakdown. And some of those stories we have to get out. I don't think people in Canada understand well enough how quickly things are changing and how serious they are in terms of the implications, particularly in the north. So if you can help us with that, the rest of us be more aware of it, I think that'd be really, really good. Christine, for me.
Sorry. This is my first attendance at a meeting, but one of my volunteers, Suzanne Elston, has been attending these on behalf of Climate Justice Durham, which is a group that I'm representing here tonight. We did a little bit of strategic planning at a potluck on Sunday. Our group is essentially a coalition of young people and seniors. The young people are busy with school, and the seniors have more time and driver's licenses and cars to help get them around to places. So that's a happy relationship we have. The things we were talking about, again, we're in Ontario, so we're very focused on the potential of 2 elections coming up and how we can move the needle on any of that. And our conclusion is that we're a small group, so we need to join with others to do that. So the relationship building piece is something we'll be focusing on. Also, we're really focusing on heat maximums. So heat bylaws, protections for workers, protections for people living in apartments, protections for people who are exposed to the elements, for students in schools that aren't air conditioning, for people in long-term care which many of which are still not air conditioned. So those are some of the things that we're hoping to focus on. If that is any inspiration for your spring event, I'm not sure. And And we're reaching out to our more empathetic MPs, MPPs, and MPs. We have a very good MP in Whitby, but we're also surrounded by a lot of conservative MPs in this area as well. So, and of course, we're in Portland. It's kind of depressing all around on that. So we really need to try and influence people, and really appreciate the ideas that people have expressed here. So I just wanted to share that a little bit. Thanks.
Cool. And yes, that did provide inspiration, both because you're a small group, as you say, in taking the initiatives, and also to see you here speaking for the first time, also inspirational. And you'll notice that we're trying to build more and more participation from different members, and we have to find ways to do that. Please share your story, what you're doing on the webpage once that's ready to go. Bonnie.
Hi everyone. Just so you know, Quadra Island is near Campbell River, which is on Vancouver Island, because many of you probably don't know where it is. So the action that we had on October 1st was in Campbell River, but the organizers actually were on Quadra Island. Anyway, my point is, there's so many environmental organizations, and many of them quite major, quite large. In British Columbia, there's Dogwood, etc. And many of the supporters of these organizations are seniors. I'm just wondering if Seniors for Climate could reach out to them to see if they will publicize events to their supporters. That's my idea.
Thank you. So I know that some of that's been done, and for sure, get in touch with Arlene, who's in the BC Hub, that can speak to that as well. Or maybe Arlene wants to comment now on that.
Yeah, we did send things out as we found out about them, and they've been quite supportive. So anytime we want to send more to them, they will broadcast it. In fact, for the May 28th webinar last year, we publicized that, and the next day we had 80-some people sign up. So people do pay attention to their newsletter and everything, for sure.
Great, thanks. Brian?
It's very helpful for people to know where the speaker is coming from. So if I'm going to take just a few seconds to tell you how to change your name to add your city. And that is to go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, hit the 3 dots, go down to rename, and add the name of your city. It's easy to do, and it helps us all know where you're calling from.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. Rob. You're on mute, and I'm not sure if you're... Rob, you're on mute. There we go.
Sorry, I'm talking to you from rural Alberta. This may shape a little bit of what I'm about to say. It's kind of easy to be cynical about politics in rural Alberta. I think we are largely ignoring the elephant in the room. And that is that next year we have an election, and it looks like we're going to turf the Liberals. And the Liberals leave a lot to be desired, but they have done more for the climate than any previous government. We're going to replace them with the Conservatives. If you look at the Conservatives' policy document, it's over 50 pages long, doesn't mention climate change. Other than axe the tax, the only policy that is at all related to climate change is a vague support for innovation. Nothing else. And they believe that they can get elected with that, and the polls would seem to indicate that that's the case. So I think we should be targeting the Conservative Party in our specific communities, or Pierre Poilievre. We need to have them accept that climate change is real, that it is a threat to us in Canada and humanity, that there are opportunities along with the challenges of the energy transition that has to take place. We need to have them accept that there is an energy transition that has to take place. And we need them to say what specific policies they would support in this energy transition. And I believe that that is what we should be working on. And I believe that's the elephant in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Very important points. Janet.
Yeah, I'm just following up on what Rob just said. There are other options to cooperate. If you look for Cooperate for Canada, for example, Fair Vote Canada, both these organizations had exactly what Rob Hill is talking about in mind when they're saying we should follow the example of the Conservatives in BC and the left-leaning parties in France in having pressure on the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens to select the ridings in which they'll have a candidate run. And the numbers have already been done by Fair Vote Canada, which ridings each of those three parties should run a candidate. And I think that that's probably the best option for climate action that we could have, is influence our politicians to collaborate and choose the ridings where they could win that riding against the Conservatives. It's an option if you're interested.
I think we lost Janet there. Okay.
She might come right back.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Liba.
I know that this is a very big discussion, and I'm not sure if we're going to, morph off into that direction. But as I said before, there are a lot of different aspects to the work that we do, and the people who've been speaking have informed us about the kind of work that they're doing, and it's all really important. The issue about working during an election, obviously, some of us work in our own ridings in an election for the candidate of our choice. The issue of spending a lot of time and energy in trying to defeat Conservative candidates in ridings is a very big discussion. So as I said, I'm not sure if you want to pursue the discussion here and now. I just want to say it's not the only attack. It's mobilizing education, and also this issue of attempting to get rid of Conservatives also includes the education piece, because one of the things that we need to help people with is to make the connection between affordability, which is what Poilievre and the Conservatives are talking about, Trump, Ford in Ontario, and climate. And so we have to make those very important links for people and help them to understand that once we move in the direction of renewables, I mean, as we continue along the road to using renewables, how much more affordable their lives will be.
Thanks. So pretty clear, we've got an uphill fight ahead. The recent people who've spoken have talked about the danger of a Conservative government, and that's clear. It's also clear in other elections, other parts of the country, that similar dynamics. And the objective here is to build enough of a movement that it will turn things around. We're at the beginning of that process in one sense. There's been a lot of work done on climate over the last number of decades. What's needed now, I mean, and this is to reinforce all the things that people have said, what's needed now is a movement that's so powerful it can't be ignored. As a movement that becomes so powerful that you can't just switch people's attention to jobs issues and therefore wipe out any consideration that are in people's minds in the immediate, or taxes, etc. We, as the last speaker said, we have to make the connection, but the connection has to be that climate is a crucial issue. It's not separate from a better life. In fact, it's part of having a better life, is dealing with the climate crisis. It's a big job. We're not going to solve that in the next few months, but we are going to begin to build a movement that leads to the solution, that becomes so powerful eventually that it can't be ignored. So I think it's important to keep that perspective. Let's not get discouraged because things are tough. They're tough, and they might get tougher in the next little period of time. But what's true is that if people do unite, we can overcome that. We certainly can. Plenty of examples in history of that happening. So that's the job, to increase our numbers, to increase the awareness, to make the connections, to help people understand what we're talking about is a better life. What we're talking about is life itself. And, so we'll learn how to do that, and we'll learn how to do it better. And that'll be true in elections. It'll be true not in elections. It'll be true, when we're talking to people locally. It'll be true when we're talking to people on the national stage. And it's not going to be easy. It's not, we all know this. It's not going to be easy, but the potential's there, and the potential in this room, the potential of uniting with other people, that's where we have to go. And, the stronger and the more numbers we bring out, the more we're going to influence elections. We're going to influence other things as well. And I'll just go to Anne, who wanted to speak, and then we're going to move on to the next agenda point.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on your word about connections. I think one important thing that we can try to do is to help people make the connection between their concerns and their needs and the climate. And I think that that's something that's missing for a lot of people. It seems to me that people will choose, for example, a coal mine, which is just, devastating for the climate because of jobs. And, assuming they know anything about climate change, if they did, in that case, jobs trump climate. And I think one message we can bring forward is we need to demand of our political leaders that they show people that choosing the climate is actually to their advantage, not just in terms of species survival, which may be a bit abstract for some people, but in terms of their futures, and to demand of our politicians that they develop opportunities for people to transition to. I think that the whole idea of the fair transition or the just transition, our politicians seem to have no clue as to what that means. And I think maybe not only do we have to educate the public, but maybe educate the politicians as to what that means, so that people see it's in their advantage to act in favor of the climate, short term as well as longer.
Thank you. So maybe that should be one of the webinars we do, is how to make the connection. What's the connection? And maybe we can learn, from people who are already doing that work. So that's something we can give some thought to, perhaps early on in the new year, to have that kind of discussion. Be interested to see what people think of that. Okay, so let's move on to the next agenda point, and that is we have some presentations, and this speaks to the idea that there'll be among everybody, some ideas around things we could be doing, and people are going to put forward a couple of examples now, and then that'll be part of what we do going forward. So I think it's Muriel Jarvis who's going to speak from New Brunswick. I may be mistaken.
And Muriel, it's Dave Smith. Do you want me to share the slides?
Yes, please. Yeah. So this is a proposal that was put together by the various groups within New Brunswick. Fredericton, St. John, St. Andrews, I think Miramichi. Do you have the slides, Dave? Perfect. All right. So the proposal we're putting forward, we're calling Climate Chat Across the Generations. And just in a nutshell, it's a program that will prepare and encourage grandparents or seniors, parents and children to discuss the climate crisis and explore solutions together. So over the last hour, a number of you have mentioned the need for more education, Number of you mentioned opportunities for young people and seniors and middle-aged people to come together and talk about the climate crisis and solutions. So this, I think, is an initiative that might go a long way towards doing that. Again, there are opportunities for both all the participants, and the opportunities we see for Seniors for Climate is a boost in national and public awareness, that it's an opportunity to bring in, I know at our last meeting, people kept talking about bringing in people who aren't in the choir. So an opportunity to bring in people who aren't presently here, and an opportunity for branding. How do I get the next slide? Oh, there. So it's a 4-step process, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on each step. But essentially, the first step is to create a guide. Again, people talked about how do we make this real for people. Billy, I think, talked about having a climate change basics with lots of graphics. So that's how we would see the guide. This guide would then be digitized and put on the Seniors for Climate website and launched with fanfare on either Earth Day or summer solstice. But in the last hour, a number of you have mentioned the preference for Earth Day. So we could possibly get something ready to launch for Earth Day. We also saw there being a live event that could be co-launched with the guide. And the guide would become a living document, altering and changing as the needs change. Next slide. So the guide itself would contain questions, discussion points, hands-on activities, graphic examples, and facts on the climate crisis. So we saw this as sort of an opportunity to pull together all of the information that we've just been talking about, facts, factual information with lots of graphical examples, so that people who aren't as savvy about this can easily open up those lines of communication. And we would create this with input from environmental educators, community centers, non-government organizations, and of course the Indigenous traditional knowledge holders. Next slide. We would hope that Seniors for Climate has the expertise to be able to digitize this and put it on their website. And then all the promotion to drive people to the website would be done through social media with various groups. People like David Suzuki could promote it on their tours, talks, social media pages. People who are going to use the guide would download it themselves, so there's no cost to SFC. There's no printing cost, and it would be strongly promoted on, for instance, Earth Day. Next slide. So we would also see a co-launch. So the day that we launched the guide, we could also launch an actual live event that would be taking place perhaps in one national location, and people could stream into this. And that event would also be recorded so that people could watch it afterwards to give them examples of how to use the guide and make those kinds of climate discussions. We could also create a YouTube video prior to the launch showing people using the guide and how to engage people in those kinds of discussions. Next slide. And then the guide, of course, would alter and change as need be. We would encourage people to share their stories, give feedback on how it worked, what needed to change. There's opportunity for wider collaboration. Maybe the disability community, racialized newcomer populations, all of those could be brought to bear and brought in to be engaged. So I'm going to ask Anne now, who's involved with this as well from New Brunswick, to lead a discussion on what your thoughts or questions are.
Okay, we
and
have about,
McAllister.
Ann, go ahead. We have about 5 minutes for this because I will come back to, we may be able to come back to it later. Go ahead, Ann.
Yes, I think I'll just start entertaining questions right now because the hands are going up. So on my screen first is Ricky Stewart.
Thanks. Climate Legacy has been working on this for several years, and we currently have a pilot project with For Our Kids that has piloted one intergenerational conversation in London, and we'll be doing another couple. We've also really benefited from the work that SCAN has done through Joan Kuyak in Ottawa with conversation cards. So we've got several experiments underway, and I'd be very happy to speak to you or anybody else for how this could go.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, the For Our Kids project is hoping to develop a guide like the one you're talking about by the spring. I'm not sure it's going to be ready for Earth Day, but we could talk about that with them and also with you if Earth Day is the launch date. Another option would be to do some more piloting around Earth Day and then put the results of that into the guide.
Thank you, Ricky. I would love to collaborate, and I'm sure Muriel feels the same way. So I'm wondering how we can get in touch with you. Could you maybe put your email in the chat, and will the chat be sent to us? Because I can't copy it. But if the chat is sent to us, then I could pick up the email.
Okay.
So we will get the chat out to people. That's not a problem. We'll also make sure if you contact us to give you the information you need. And Ricky, if you could put your email address in now, you can just read it off or copy it that way in the meantime. But we'll make sure you're connected. Ricky will make sure that we'll make sure you're connected, in fact.
Okay, so would I contact you to pick up Ricky's email address?
Ricky, it's in the chat. It's in there already.
And you're going to send us the chat.
Yes, we'll make sure to get in touch with you one way or the other.
Wonderful.
Directly.
Thank you.
Never mind the chat directly. We'll address that.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Next one is Lynn Overden.
Hello. Yeah, that's me. I think, Easter is on April the 20th. And then there are some in the chat. There was a couple of other religious holidays in March and April when families might be together. It would be nice to have some of these, whatever the guide is, to have it ready for these family reunions.
Thank you. That is a good suggestion. Okay. And so thank you, Lynn. Next is Letitia.
Just a few suggestions to help promote this. I think it's a fantastic idea. Do you know of The Green Teacher, a magazine that goes out across Canada? They would help promote that for sure.
Okay.
And the Environmental Education Council has started up again. And Tim Grant, who used to be editor of the Green Teacher, is on the board of that, and they would probably help promote that as well. So if you got in touch with Tim Grant, I'll put his address in the chat.
Great, that would be terrific. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Letitia. And are there any other hands at this point?
Okay, we'll take one more, but I'm going to sum up and follow up on this, but because we have to move on to the next agenda point. But Lucien had his hand up, and then we'll wrap up if that's okay, Ann.
Yes, that would be fine, Nick.
Thank you. Lucien? You're on mute.
Am I being heard?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of lost on where we are on the agenda. I'm assuming that it's the discussion about what happens in the spring. And I'm from the Global Foundation and Sustainable Development in Alberta and Beaver County, not far where Rob Hill lives. And I'd like to start with just echoing what he said about connecting in some way with the elephant in the room. We are typically, we are already planning quite a serious tree planting event on 2 very damaged properties in central Alberta that would highlight the issues of climate change. But April 22 is too early. The ground is still frozen by then or thawing. We can't even get trees early. That's why we would be planning it first week of June for the beginning of Environment Day and Environment Week. That would be more appropriate. Now, if we are organizing something for April 22, we would do something, but it would be quite a minimalist activity compared to what we would be planning at the beginning of June.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. So just to, a couple of things. Lucian, you mentioned that you're not sure where we are on the agenda and where we're on the agenda. So we will be back to you in January and hopefully before with the date and with the considerations of when we're going to have the spring mobilization. And all the things that people have brought up are considerations. And some of that's going to be looking at what's happening internationally. Some of it's going to be looking at the timing in Canada, et cetera. So that we're going to get back to you on that. In the meantime, one of the things we recognize as a group is that we can't organize everything centrally. We don't have the resources. So the New Brunswick proposal is a perfect example where it links up with what Ricky is doing in Climate Legacy, where we can use this forum to develop connections where things can be organized that don't depend on the people who are currently there doing the central organizing. We're taxed to accomplish what we're accomplishing so far. So that's what this part of the agenda was about, is to hear some proposals to see if there's a response, and then use that to, if there's a good enough response, create the conditions in which it can be followed up. So I think that's happened. Sounds like it's really the ideal has happened around Climate Legacy linking up with this initiative in New Brunswick, and we will follow up on that. Also, now we want to go on to another initiative that you will hear about, buy350.org, which you may or may not be interested in, participating in. So I'm going to ask Rolly Montpellier to present that. And I'm sorry I'm rushing through these things, but we have to make sure we cover the agenda points. And hopefully we'll get these things happening. We'll make the connections and we'll learn how to do it better.
So Nick, how much time do I have?
Rolly, you have about 2 minutes.
Okay. Right now, as we speak, there's a meeting going on being led by 350 Canada, and it involves a discussion about how lessons learned from elections in the US, which is very recent, and also elections in the UK, how to fight right populism in elections. And this follows very, very nicely from the comments I've heard minutes ago about elections in Canada. And so some of the material that I'm going to share with you right now, I'm going to actually put some links in the chat. But what we will do is we will follow up with an email to organizers, because what 350 is going to do is actually launch a campaign. The name of the campaign is All of Us. And basically, it's a campaign that will help groups and communities prepare for the election, and especially to try to create a narrative which will neutralize or counteract the negative, climate populism narrative that is being followed by Poilievre. So it's basically to try to have a more positive, populist vision, but not from the far right, but certainly from a more progressive perspective. And the idea is to focus on making polluters pay and big corporations pay, and using those funds to address affordability issues, but also climate issues. So the discussion is not so much about climate. It's also about how climate has affected everything, including affordability. So As I said, some of the material has just come in like 10 minutes ago, so I haven't even had a chance to assimilate it. But I will share some information, a couple of links, and this, I think, will answer some of the questions that were raised about how do we prepare for the next election, because how we've been preparing in terms of climate has not worked very well. And earlier today, Climate Legacy, Betty and myself had a discussion with Bill McKibben to try to learn from some of the lessons that they have learned in the States with the recent election of Trump. And I mean, I can't go into any details, but they are reorganizing and rethinking their approach to how, of course, they're going to act in the next few years. And we hope to be able to learn a lot from what's happened there. He believes that some of the lessons learned in the States might help us a lot in preparing on how to counter the negative populism that Poilievre is going to follow. So, I mean, I'm going to stop there, Nick, because again, some of this material has just come in to me after our meeting started, and the 350 meeting is going on right now as we speak here.
Okay. So as I understand it, Rolly, the 350 campaign will train people to do door-to-door work, and also have in mind that in doing that, it's not just around the election, but it's preparing to continue on past elections.
Exactly. Let me just read you one paragraph. We are looking for groups across the country who want to build a power for a transformative future in their communities, fighting massive tax of big corporations and so on, and building power behind a compelling vision of a future that works for all of us. The campaign was going to be called All of Us. And I think it has many, many of the elements which we're going to be looking for in our messaging going forward as we enter an election year, a very important election year.
So we will make sure, I guess, to get some of that information to you following this meeting. And it's another initiative that can assist, perhaps, in the work you're doing locally and can assist us overall together. So there's clearly a connection between that kind of work and the work that Muriel just talked to us about.
And 350 is one of our endorsers and one of our contributors also for funding. And also, I think that they will be doing workshops, they will be doing training on how to, various techniques and tactics, a lot of tactical training around how to prepare for elections.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go on to the budget item because it's 7:25 and we hope to end at 7:30. It looks like we're going to go a little bit past that. I hope you can stay on with us. We've lost a few people already. And then we've got, the sum up and any, overall comments.
Yeah.
Roy, you want to talk to the budget and fundraising?
Yeah, I'll talk very, very broadly with the budget. I'm not going to bore you with the spreadsheet I'm looking at here in front of me, although Dave Smith would really love that because he likes spreadsheets. But our budget for the October 1st, or last year's major event, our budget was around $53,000, okay? Our actual expenditures were closer to $55,000, so we overspent the budget a little bit. However, our fundraising kept going and kept going and kept going, and we ended up with raising close to $63,000 in funds. So we actually have a bit of a cushion going forward, which we're going to need, by the way. But the money came basically from foundations, about 38,000, about 8,000 from our sponsors, about 4,000 from endorsers, and 13,000 from our crowdfunding page, which is with Small Change Fund. And many of us, contributed online to that fund, and that will continue. So that's kind of where we are now. Right now we're working on getting ready for next year's budget. We had some budget estimates we looked at last week at steering committee, and also doing two fundraising projects right now. One of them is to get the Small Change Fund campaign going. So in December, second week in December, we're going to be sending out an appeal, an email to the entire base that we have, 3,400 people or so. And we are launching the 2025 campaign. Last year's target was 15,000. This year's target, sorry, would be at least 35,000. And of course, we're going to be also working on a proposal to obtain funding from foundations again. And if last year we spent 53,000, then one can expect that next year's budget, 2025, since we'll be doing more, we'll be doing 2 events, and we'll be doing a large event in the fall, we would need about at least double that. So we'll be looking for some major fundraising going forward, because we have some major plans going forward. And I can't talk about the estimated budget for next year, but it'll be at least double what it was this year. That's the proposal that's before steering committee now.
Okay.
Nick, I don't know if you wanted more details than that. It's just a very, very broad overview of where our monies are.
No, that's good. And I think the important thing is, unless people have questions, the important thing is we're going to start that fundraising before, in December. And
Yes.
And that expect to see that. We're going to be looking to expand our mailing list from 3,500, which it currently is, to 10,000. So we have some objectives like that, and that that's where we're trying to go. Any questions around that, the budget and the? Because if not, then I'm going to move on to summarizing for the day. So first thing is, the challenge is big. There's an elephant in the room. There's more than one, unfortunately. There's one south of the border as well. They're big out, there are global challenges that are extremely significant. So we have to rise to that challenge, and that's the plan. There will be a mobilization in the spring. We have to pick the date, but that has to be determined in the next little while through conversations with people like Bill McKibben and others, so that in Canada, to figure out what's the best timing that maximizes our impact. In the meantime, we will find ways to provide support for groups that are doing things, including if it's organizing something like the 2 initiatives you just heard about. We can't do all of that centrally, but if people step forward and are willing to work together, then some of that can happen. We'll also be doing webinars and some workshops to provide you with tools that may help you in various ways, everything from working with the media to how to organize on the ground. We want to increase the numbers dramatically. The first step was getting as many locations as possible. The next step, is as many people as possible. More, not to this isn't the end, but we need to expand our numbers, our influence, and our appeal in terms of the population. So between now and the spring, those are the things we'll be concentrating on. We're going to meet again in January. And January the 14th is the date we've set for the next meeting of this group. We'll return to the 6:30 p.m. start time rather than 6 p.m. We hope that that's a more convenient time across the country in various ways. But if it isn't, certainly let us know. And at that meeting, we'll be like launching. We'll in a sense of, we're into the new year, we're ready to go. We've got a date. We're putting the things together we need to put together. We have some sense of what educational things we can do. We have some sense of whether there's movement from the work between Climate Legacy and New Brunswick. We'll have some sense of what's happening with the 350.org. And of course, we'll popularize any other things. They'll be on our webpage. We'll have the page there where you can let people know what you're doing. And there's no question that people learn and are inspired by hearing what other people are doing. It'll be very interesting to have news from the north about what's happening there that we don't hear enough about. If you want to talk about stories, that's a story. It'll be very interesting to hear about initiatives in small places like the Durham Group, and other people are taking initiatives that other people have talked about, Yellowknife, etc. The intent is to inspire and to grow and build and to work with others as much as possible. And so that's the plan. And thank you very much for joining us this evening. We hope to have more out to the next meeting. And please let us know any ideas, questions, thoughts, and we'll get back to you with the chat and some of the conclusions from this meeting.